Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Worship Guitar Show. And have we got a show for you tonight? Nigel Hendroff, where do I start? First of all, he's one of the most influential worship guitar players. He's incredibly humble. He's a brilliant player. He's a lovely guy. He's a leader. He's a follower. He's an investor in people. And he's somebody that I've had the privilege of knowing for quite some time, and I've probably totally embarrassed him. But at the same time, it's all true. Nigel, up.
I'm here. I'm here. Sorry. Hi.
uh, Good on you, mate. Nigel, how are you?
Mate, I'm a little embarrassed after that intro, to be honest with you, but I'm good. I'm really good, thank you. It's good to see you
It's a pleasure
again.
to see you again. You know, it's an interesting thing about
Wow.
ministry is that, you get a chance to see, unlike in a traditional mainstream music career, you see all the different sides of a person. I think one of my favorite memories of you was watching you lead the team meeting on a rehearsal night at Hillsong, which is probably now 15 or so years ago. And the thing is that there's all this stuff that happens in our lives that people never see, right? It's the stuff that ultimately God sees when we think when nobody's watching. But the amazing thing about what you've been able to do over this period of time is fantabulous. So what I would love to do tonight is kind of break it down into some of the different verticals. Because again, one of the things that I love most about you is that yes, you're a great guitar player, but you're a servant and a leader, and that servant leader spirit is something that is part of the DNA of what pours out of Hillsong's music. It's part of what has led to that anointing, such that you've been able to have the impact for God in the world that you've had the opportunity to do. And then the best part, kind of the silver lining, is you get a chance to use your gifts to do that. So I would love it if you could, let's start there. Let's talk about being able to use your gifts for the kingdom.
Right. Well, it's such a treat, really, to be able to, and an honor to do what I get to do. I was sort of mentioning to you before while we're setting up, like I never set out to become a worship guitarist, if you like. I didn't even know that was a thing. Um, I just wanted to play music. I started playing music. Oh, I was exposed to music from I guess, a relatively young age, about 8, 9 years old, playing organ and keyboard, and then progressing onto drums, and then stumbling onto guitar, actually. Um, and my uncles would sit around the campfire and play Elvis Presley tunes while sipping a whiskey or a beverage of some sort. And I was like, I want to do that. So they taught me three chords, and off I went. And I came to know the Lord when I was about 15, and I'd already been playing in pubs and clubs from the age of 13, but never did I think I was gonna do this. I used what was in my hand, and I just wanted to have fun and make some music, and this is where this is where it's taken me. So it's kind of fun, yeah.
So as you've been on this journey, what are some of the highlights? Some of the things that you're like, this is a peak experience. I never want to forget this.
But we're talking about music, right?
It
Specifically.
can be anything. So it can be music, but at the same time, if there's anything that you're like, hey, all right, as an aside, my dad worked as a lawyer for years and years. Went for a vacation to South America. Ended up in Brazil. He's climbing up to see the statue, right? In this cart, and there's a bunch of guys from the UK. No, excuse me, a bunch of guys from Ireland. Hint, hint. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're in a band. Oh, my dad's like, oh, my son plays guitar. Oh, what's the name of the band? You two. And
Wow.
the dumb luck of being, and my dad didn't have any idea who they were, but being in a closed environment, going up to have this Jesus moment with the U2 guys would be kind of in the peak experience rappers. So, what are some of the things that, you really look back on and go, wow, this was an amazing experience?
Well, I can't say I've met you two or anyone like that, but I guess from a playing point of view, I've had the opportunity to play in some like really cool places. I've been afforded the opportunity to really travel the world with Hillsong, and so grateful for that opportunity. Played in some very big rooms. You're talking about Brazil, and this is years back in the like maybe the mid 2000s, mid to late 2000s. I was got the chance to play in where they do the Rio Carnival with Darlene and a couple of other places, and that must have been about 80,000 people there. It was ridiculous, and I'm like standing on the stage like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm this bedroom hack that's just just giving it a go, and then I'm finding myself in all these crazy random places. But I mean, I guess the beauty of that is like I'm a part of a bigger team, a greater team that we're all just wanting to make music and take I guess the message of the gospel that we've been afforded, that we've the story of the gospel, the story of the Bible through music, getting to do that and take that message around the world is pretty cool. Yeah, I still pinch myself to get the chance to do that, and to play on the albums. I guess that's what people see, that they see with the social media or the albums, the DVDs, what have you. But I mean, I guess that's the cream. That's the fun stuff. But that comes from a place of just like you said, serving week in, week out, being a part of a church, and a greater team that we're all serving the same vision, and yeah, sort of sharpening each other. So it's kind of cool. It's definitely not a one man show, that's for sure.
Back when we first met was about the same time I got to meet Ian Fisher and Lucy Fisher. And, Ian was one of the guys that really poured into me when I first got saved. And, as I understand, he used to provide pastoral care to the team. Can you speak to the value of providing pastoral care to the worship team?
Oh, I cannot speak more highly for I think anything to do with worship or the creative arts, if you like, is people pour out their craft, their gift, their talents, their identity into these things that we find ourselves doing, whether it's playing guitar or making music or pushing buttons or pointing a camera or whatever. It's kind of easy for people's identity to get wrapped up in that stuff. You know, so I guess pastoral care in church, it certainly keeps you grounded. It keeps the main thing the main thing. We do everything out of relationship first, not so much out of task. Yes, there's there's obviously the task at hand, whether you're making music, whether you're helping lead worship on a weekend or whatever. But all that stuff should come out of relationship. Yeah, we know how to string a few chords together, and there's obviously constructs within music to make that work. But everything, as in terms of church anyway, I think should come out of playing from a place of relationship or serving from a place of relationship. There's so much more power and synergy in that. And pastoral care obviously sort of brings all that together. It keeps it grounded. It keeps the main thing the main thing. So I'm forever grateful for people like you said, Ian and Lucy Fisher. They're one of the first people that I met when I first moved to Sydney, and they were one of my some of my closest friends, and certainly the part of the reason why I guess I'm still here after 20 something years. So yeah, invaluable.
The funny thing is, you said, the still here. That was one of the things that strikes me most is that there's been a lot of change over the years. Darlene, I mean, nobody could have imagined a Hillsong without Darlene, and nobody would have necessarily imagined. We're going to talk about Bono. Let's talk about Joel. I mean, one of the most amazing wordsmiths to ever come across. And, I recently got caught up on my Hillsong United. And I remember the first trip I took to Australia, kind of coming off the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and there was this little sign in somebody's window, "One Way." And of course, that was about that song, "One Way Jesus." And to see the seed of that go out into the world was a very powerful thing. As you look at the things that you're putting your hands to now, What are the things that you're excited about that are going to be next for you?
Wow, I mean that's quite a big question, really. Look, music will always be a part of my life, and like you said, I've served under various, many different leaders. Um, but our senior pastors, Brian and Bobby Houston, still paving the way in terms of vision and leadership for our church, and I'm so grateful to still sit under that. For me as a musician, as a father and a husband, and um, I I'm not trying to like conquer the world, to be the next and latest and greatest whatever. I'm just happy to be serving with what's in my hand to do. I feel at my age, 21, plus a couple. Now I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to prove, I'm not trying to prove my self worth or trying to, you be accepted or whatever like that. I don't feel like I have anything more to prove. The one thing I'm trying to do is raise up three lovely kids and be the best husband I can, and because that to me speaks of the next generation as well. While still taking whatever opportunity comes my way, through church and through Hillsong worship and doing that as faithful as I can. Um, Definitely, what I don't want to be doing is being that 65-year-old guy with maybe white dreads holding on to my position on stage, you know, saying no, keep rostering me. I want to keep playing. I'm okay with not playing. Seriously, I'm okay with someone else doing the tours or doing the albums. Seriously, I've reconciled with that. I've come to that place of just like bring the next generation through. It's okay. But the fact that I still get asked to do stuff, I'm so grateful. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm not looking for the next big mountaintop experience. It's I guess the greatest joy is just enjoying the mundane of the day to day, and making music and being a great dad and husband and talking to people like you, and it's great.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit about gear. Henry Velasquez says, by the way, Sir Nigel, thank you for being the
Hello.
greatest inspiration to me. To help me find the worship tone as a guitarist to give my life to Christ in 2313 and listen to you play in the Hillsong. And I'd say that's here we go. Second part.
Amazing.
What inspires you to make the tone that you had in your mind uh, as the Hillsong guitar sound?
Um, that's I get asked that question, quite a bit, and I'd never have an eloquent answer for it because it's like I grew up listening to music in the '80s, and I love the big stereo chorus, wet sounds, and all those sort of things. And I remember as a kid just working in a music store, just grabbing amps and plugging in a stereo chorus and loving that stereo image of two amps. And I've always sort of gravitated towards that type of sound. Now, whether I don't know how, I just happen to make it work at church, but when it comes to pedals and experimenting, I love just grabbing pedals and turning it up to 10, turning everything up to 10, see what it does, and then dialing it back from there. But I love space in mixes, and I guess when I make music, when I'm playing guitar, if I've got headphones on or if it's through these speakers, whatever, I just love the stereo width of two, like a stereo guitar. I guess I love the big sort of reverbs and delays, and I've obviously learned to tone it down and place it in the mix. But if I was to be purely self-indulgent, yeah, I just guitar for me is an extension of my vocabulary, if you like. um, and it just basically without getting too weird and off in the fairies, like it's part of my voice. It helps me communicate what I can't necessarily say with words. So it's my language in music, and this is the way I speak. If it's like a conversation I'm having with you. Um, you know, Guitar for me is just it's been finding the gaps in the music and hopefully trying to say the right things at the right times. Um, and I've collected a few pedals along the way and bits of gear, and that's all served the purpose. But for me, it's just it started with sitting in the bedroom, just trying to figure the stuff out. And when you learn something new, it's just like, oh, that's like the Bible talks about. Okay, just going to go down the Bible talk a little bit, but the Bible talks about in Psalm 33, it says, sing to him a new song, play skillfully and shout for joy. Um, there's joy in bringing something new, and there's joy in bringing something of skill. So that's really been my journey. It just every time I figure out something new, I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. I figure out how to apply it in a song, get some fun effects. And that's kind of cool. I'm sort of rambling at the moment, but that's really been my how I sort of built my sounds. I listened to bands like you mentioned U2 before, The Edge, and he's a genius when it comes to crafting guitar parts and placing it in the right parts of songs. And he uses effects like his delays as a part, as opposed to just washing out your sound because you can't play in time, and delay is going to help you play in time. He uses effects as the part of a guitar, and that really spoke to me as a guitarist. So, when I use my delays, when I use my effects, that's as much of the guitar part as the notes itself. So, anyway, take what you want with that. That's a whole lot of ramble.
No, that's good. That's great, Ramble. That's gold, actually. So the interesting thing is, and we've got some great questions coming in, so I'm going to keep kind of coming back to them.
Okay.
Um,
And I'll
one
try
of
to
the,
answer them quickly.
one of the things that is neat is I've had a chance to sit here today and play through a bunch of your profiles that are available through the folks at Multitracks. And the neat thing is that it's literally sitting there with sounds that you've crafted, and it's where my guess is where you're like, oh, we need to move to 57 just a little bit to capture that. Because in one of the videos that I was watching, you're right up close and personal with the amplifier. So, one of my favorite experiences was that. Do you have a name for that room under the stage there at Hillsong? The amp room that's underneath the
No,
stage there.
yeah. I mean, that room's been moved, and now it's just a storage room for everything. But that amp room, if you like, has been moved to on stage, sort of behind the curtain. We just call it I don't know, the amp cabinet or whatever, for the lack of a better name. It's just a place where we put our amps, so we're not killing everyone on stage. Yeah, I remember that. I remember you coming, and what did we do? We just went for a walk, took you for a tour down under the stage, see where the amps are, the mic placements, all that stuff. Yeah, we
That
still
was
have an iteration of that. Yeah.
Well, the neat thing about that though is that there's a certain amount when you're crafting your sound. And I think one of the things that when people think about you, they think about a signature sound. And, there are a couple. It's interesting. The last time I interviewed Brooke, one of the things I talked about was when I was there when Hosanna came out, you couldn't walk into a church on a Sunday and not have them playing Hosanna. And she was like, really? I was like, yes. And, I believe my favorite version is you and Ray, uh, the two guitar parts working together. In terms of crafting a guitar sound that sits on its own and interacts with other players, is there a conscious thought when you go to craft a sound, or is it just a feel, or is it a little bit of the two?
It's all of that, actually. When it comes to writing guitar parts, it's the first thing I ask myself is, well, what's the melody doing, and what's the song asking? Um, Now, obviously, guitar sits in the same frequency or timbre as keyboards and as vocals, So you've got a few things fighting for that same space. So, like I said before, it's always a conversation. But when I write guitar parts, and working with our producers like Michael Chislett or the other members of our team, um, it's like, okay, what needs to happen where? What's the melody doing? And let's let's start with that. So if the melody is playing like a 1-3-5 note or singing a 1-3-5 note, I'll start with something like that and try to mirror what the melody is doing, so it ties in together. And I'll start at that point. I'll start with maybe like a 3 note arpeggio or whatever, and then just sort of fluff around from there. I'll go to my standard dotted eighth delay with a bit of reverb and just start playing around with that. And um, but it's always like, what is the song doing? What are the other layers doing? What are the keyboard players doing? Often I'll be sitting there in a room writing a part, and I'm like, keys like might happen, and I'm like, that person might play something. I'm like, what is that? I play that again, and I'll just double it. I'm like, okay, can we refine that? And it's a conversation. It's never, like I said before, it's never a one man show. It's a team effort. And it's always about, what does the song need? How do we make the song, and how do we make the lyric and melody the hero? And everything we do supports that.
Can you say that again? Make the lyric
Uh,
and melody the hero. Can you say that one more time? Hold on. Here we go.
what? Okay.
Make
So,
make the
okay. So,
lyric and
yeah. So
make the,
when we're crafting guitar parts or any parts for the music, it's about making the lyric and the melody of the song the hero. So everything we do supports that. It's not to detract. It's not to talk over it. It's not to play over it or whatever. You know, it's how do we bring that to the top? How do we make that the hero? Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, stop it, Dad.
No. The great thing about players who've been playing for a long time is they influence each other in very fun ways, right? It's something, let's say you and I had the same five pedals, and four of them we put in the same order, but one of them we would flip the order in, right? You get 10 guitar players together, and most everything's the same, but then there's a little thing that they do differently. And the great thing about the worship thing that's great is that there's more to this than the servant heart in theory should make its way onto the platform, right? It's one of my favorite things is about playing in stereo. I'll go down the rabbit trail with you. Is that it enables you to surround the vocal on either side and create whether
Hmm.
it and you're playing these internal harmonies that work with the melody line in such a way that
Hmm.
you're creating this secondary harmony that is supporting them, kind of like these sus chords or triads or whatever it is that's working in there. And that idea of the stereo thing is pretty darn cool. So I'm going to take the up. Go for it. No,
No, I was gonna say, but the trick is with that though, is if you're a lone guitarist doing that, awesome. But if you're working with another guitarist, then you need to work with your front of house guy or whatever of how to place that in the mix. If you've got two big stereo guitar sounds happening with stereo keys and drums and 8 vocals and all sorts of stuff you're trying to fit in the mix, like a stereo guitar can be purely self-indulgent for yourself, but a bit of a headache for everyone else. So it's like, it's a negotiation. But like I said, if you're playing by yourself, and it's awesome.
I love it. We've got a guitar question. David, what is the one guitar you currently own that you would never part ways with, and what is your bucket list guitar that you would like to buy?
Wow, it's a big question. Well, the guitar that I probably have been loving, you know, there's a couple of guitars. I'm using this Falcon. People think it's a white Falcon. It's not a white Falcon. It's a Falcon, the creme de marine color. It's like this sort of off blue, very light blue color. There's that, and probably my this, I don't know if you can see it. This penguin. It's
Lovely.
a casino gold penguin. Um, I've been loving that, and from an acoustic point of view, probably um, this Martin. It's an OM42 that you probably would have heard on most of the Hillsong worship albums. I'll do the acoustic parts for those albums, and that's what you hear. Look, that's not one guitar, that's three guitars, but they're my currently three that I probably wouldn't part with. And my bucket list guitar. Wow, that's a I don't know actually. Someone was showing me the guitars that Mark Knopfler uses at the moment. I'm like, wow, they look awesome. And they're like, yeah, they're about $30,000-$40,000. I'm like, I'll just stick with my cheap ones here. So I don't really know to answer that question. But that guitar that you have in your hand is really nice. I don't know if it's a bucket list, but it's something that I wouldn't mind trying.
It is absolutely sensational. So this is we were talking about this before. It's basically the 52 broadcaster reissue, and the jangle on this thing through your
Yeah.
through your Kemper profile. It's just a very, very. It's actually got the best middle position of any Telecaster I've ever played. Oh, there we go.
Well, this is the Sir. It
Nice.
doesn't have the same. It's different, but I mean, I don't know if you can hear that. But oh, this is the middle pickup here. I mean, you're probably hearing that through these AirPods. So I don't know how good it sounds, but that's got a certain jangle, that I like.
It's got a very special jangle. I'll send you a couple of clips. There's some examples of it where when you hear it in its perfect, because like every guitar has an amp or a couple of amps that it just like everything about the guitar comes to life, and conversely, everything about it just goes straight into the toilet. There are just some combinations that just like it seemed like a great idea until it wasn't. There is a question here about the Gold Penguin, so I'm glad you picked that up. What is the pickup combination?
So look, these are the TV Jones in them. So I don't know if you can see them.
Nice.
Yeah, let's have a good close-up look. A couple of TV Jones. I'm not too sure which ones they are, but they have a certain sound to them.
Awesome.
I know with the 130th anniversary, that's got some Powertrons in it, and the output's really hot. But it's got this beautiful mid-range to it. I mean, this has got a really nice bite to it. Look, let's see I've no idea if it's in tune or anything like that. Nope, it's not in tune. Let me just. Oh man, hold on. Let me just. Oh, it's in a drop D. Yeah. Yeah, this has got a really nice bite to it. And you probably would have heard this on probably a couple of the latest albums. This is what I've been using, and it just plays really nice. It helps. Like I said before, it helps to communicate what's in my head really well. So I've been stuck on this thing for the last little bit.
I love it. All right. We got another question here. Let's see. We've got Jem, and he's actually echoing a question that I kind of had. I've actually enjoyed and kind of in the weeks preparing for this. And Jem, right? He's like the world's most famous undiscovered guitar player.
Yes.
For now.
He's awesome. Hello, mate.
So, one of my favorite things was watching. There's the Les Paul, that the really young Droff is playing. Then there's the PRSs, and then there's the Gretches, and then there's the Sirs, and then there's the Gretches and whatnot. First of all, was there kind of a conscious process of just wanting to expand the herd, or were there particular guitars you're like, I want one of those? Every guitar player has their own route of how they end up with the different guitars. What was that route for you?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I remember buying my PRS back in the day from Paul when it was like a 3-month wait you place the order and they would custom build it from scratch. And I remember getting it when I was living back in Perth. And man, I love that guitar. And to be honest with you, I think it's still somewhere around. I sold it a few years ago, and I sold it to buy a couch. What a champ! And I really miss that guitar, to be honest with you. And I think it's still floating around Sydney somewhere. So I'm going to try to track down the owner of it and, sweet talk him maybe. But it's just stylistically throughout the years. I remember getting my first Gretsch because I saw the players around here, people like Dave Moyes, like Mikey Chislett and all that playing it. I'm like, I want that sound. What is it? What is that sound? It's had a certain bite to it. I remember buying my first the I think it's here actually. This guy, it's all beat up. My little 6120 Duojet, I think that's what it is.
There we go. Come on.
I bought it off eBay for like $1,100 Australian. Didn't have a scratch in it. It was awesome, and it's. I remember getting that and that changing the way I played, and now like I still love it. I still play it, but my son, bangs on it and writes songs like "I Weed in My Pants," and screams and just hits all the strings. Oh, it's funny. But it's still I still have it in the family, and I remember buying my first Duesenberg, the blue pearl sparkle, whatever, ice pearl. I can't remember the model, but the Star Player TV. I love that guitar. Still have that. And again, that changing the way I played and changing my stylistically, if you like, my approach to worship and creating these guitar parts, and I still play those doozies. I still play the Gretches, and it's like putting on different clothes, really. It makes you feel differently for different occasions, and you dress appropriately for different occasions. And I think the guitars are like that for me. Every time I pick up something, they're like a comfy pair of slippers. It feels good. It makes me play differently for different things. It sort of creates. It makes the creative juices flow differently. You know what I'm talking about. So different things for different occasions. Yeah. So
it's interesting. You talked about the idea of how an instrument can cause you to grow. Do you prefer instruments that are easier to play, or the ones that you got to kind of come to terms with them? Like, when I first started playing Telecasters, it was basically a Telecaster straight into a Tweed amplifier. And that for me was a journey that I needed to go on. It was kind of like being out in the desert with no food or water, wandering around having to make sense of things. Do you, or is it kind of a balance between the two?
I think it's a balance between the two. So for me, when I first started playing, I played in the jazz band, and I had a Japanese Strat into a I think it was like a PV Envoy, solid state little buzzing thing. It did wonders for a jazz tone, not. And then I bought a Rat distortion pedal and a wah and a chorus pedal, and I thought that was it. That was tone from heaven. And that had a certain sort of ease to play. But just fast forward how many years? I was in the studio a couple of weeks ago, writing some guitar parts for a new album that we're working on, Hillsong Worship, and I was playing. Where do I have it here? Oh, this thing. This little. It's a little Cordoba. This little thing. It's like a mini guitar. And like I started playing on a nylon string guitar when I very first learned, and I found myself having to go back to those techniques, that sort of stuff. And this is not an easy guitar to play. Like I picked this up for I think $150, but it records beautifully. Funny enough, and but it's just it doesn't have a silky smooth action, and they're nylon strings, so it's a different touch and it's a different feel. You've got to fret it differently, and sometimes I found myself having to tune the guitar certain strings differently for different chords, and then cut and paste it together. Tricks of the trade, by the way. Um, and but I had to really wrestle with that guitar, and I love playing acoustic, and I probably tell myself that I think I'm a better acoustic player than electric player. But what I like about the acoustic is because you can't hide behind anything. So you can't hide behind layers of delays and overdrives and stuff. And what you play is what gets recorded. All the fret noise, everything, all the intricacies. That highlights, how well I can actually play in time. Highlights my right hand technique. Highlights how well I fret you know, a chord or not. So again, rambling, but I'm up for whatever challenge is thrown at me.
No,
Yeah.
that's more gold. So okay, so what are the things that you've done to work on your time? Because I think every player at a certain point kind of goes, my time is good because they've worked on it and they played with a click, but I want to make it better. So let's start on the time before we get to the intonation side of it. What are some of the things that you've done to work on your time?
Um, well, obviously playing to a metronome and playing to a click is really important. Um, Little things like, making your right hand talk to your left hand and your left hand talk to your right hand. Um, I always had this issue, as a young player, always trying to get ahead, trying to play faster, but my right hand not being able to keep up. So I had to undo a lot of, a lot of learning and just slow everything down and make sure that this right hand was like was like that metronome, was just had a really easy action. The more I tried to play in time, the more I thought about it, the more I tried to play accurately, the tenser I would get. So I'd just have to relax. Um, the tenser I got, the more out of time I'd play. So I just learned to relax. And I've been afforded the opportunity to record a lot of stuff, on our albums, and with headphones and click tracks, and listening to playing with a lot of great drummers who know how to place the beat, in front of the click and behind the click and on the click, and then you learn to adjust your internal metronome, develop your internal metronome to suit. Um, so recording yourself, whether it's in Pro Tools or Logic or whatever DAW that you have, and listening to yourself back, and seeing where your downstrokes land on the grid, and all those things have helped me, and trained my ear to build my right hand technique, if you like, and my metronome.
Do you have any suggestions on working on intonation, and where have is it the C chord with that C at the first fret that always wants to be sharp on just about any guitar, or is it kind of at the top of the neck? Where were some of the intonation areas where you were like, oh, I've got a little bit of work to do, and what did you do to fix it?
Um, wow, that's a good question. I think I, I think it came down to, firstly, what the part I was trying to write, and the type of guitar I had and the way it was set up. So maybe some of my guitars, most of my guitars are set up with 10s to 46. I've tried the 9s to 42s, I've tried the 11s and even heavier gauges. And at the end of the day, I've landed on 10s to 46. A lot of players like the heavier bass strings. Maybe they're a little bit heavier handed. I'm a really light player. I've learned to lay off being really heavy handed on my right hand. And if I do that, I tend to, I guess, lighten my clamp with my left hand, just so it sort of balances each other out. I'm very particular about tuning, and I've just worked in studios for so long, and like Mikey Chislett has told me, he is like, and this is not like blown hot or anything. You have this ability to, even if the guitar is out of tune while you're playing, you have the ability to make it in tune while you play. And I think a lot of that's just ear training, hearing, being aware of all the instruments around you, and and make sure that you're in tune, and knowing how to fret it lightly, or uh, the light strings. I'm actually trying. I want to explore maybe lighter gauge strings on some of my guitars, just to keep practicing on my touch, working on my touch. It's okay. Like, I've got technique issues I need to work on. I think we all need to work on stuff, but again, I don't think I'm answering your question, Doug, but I don't really know. It really depends what I'm trying to write at the time. Yeah, different guitars respond differently, um, for me. But like I said, all my guitars are set up with 10s and 46, and they tend to work with my touch. So yeah, I'm definitely not a heavy-handed player.
Well,
I'm not a shredder.
the interesting thing that you talked about, though, is traditionally when you start to hit harder with the right hand, the instinct is to grip the neck tighter, and if you're not at the edge of the fret, of course, then you start to push in, and the string goes short.
Hmm.
So that's yes, 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 yes. So the interesting thing is I was kind of going through the different amps that you've profiled. I was kind of
Hmm.
curious how you chose the ones you chose and why they stood out to you.
Right. Okay. So the two amps that I use almost religiously, and I still use, it's my Vox and my Matchless. Vox, it's actually AC15, and it's a Matchless Spitfire 15. I've used those amps for years and years. I've used the AC30s and the Matchless DC30s, and I love those as well. They were too big and heavy to carry around. That's the only reason why I've gotten rid of them. It's probably out of sheer laziness, to be honest with you. But that when I tour on the road, that's what I use, an AC30 and a DC30. It's that Vox Matchless combination. Uh, I use them. I use them now. They're set up in our other room for when we track, um, and they just they're able to communicate what I'm trying to say. Simply, I love the way they break up. I love the way they respond to my pedals and my style of playing. Um, so so yeah, I think they capture the sound that's in my head really well. So I profiled those as a start, and using using the 57 and the ribbon mic, which is a great combination of the bite of the 57 and then the warmth of the ribbon, and I think it captures all the frequencies of those EL84 style amps, and yeah, that was my first step in profiling.
Hmm.
So hope you like them.
Oh, they sound great. No, it's I'm just at the precipice, fancy new word here, of I mean I've got all this stuff. The Kemper is kind of the next journey for me, which is it's neat, which really kind of begs that next question. Is like the I would believe at the point that you're profiling stuff, you're believing that the technology is good enough that it's a worthwhile endeavor. And before we were talking about how depending on where you are and depending on how it's being backlined, you're just like if it's a Kemper, that's great. If it's a pair of amps, as long as they sound good and the tubes aren't ancient. I mean, how much
Hmm.
I think. Actually, let me turn this into hopefully an intelligible question. It's really easy to fixate on the gear, right? The idea is that if you walk out onto a rented backline and you go, I've got my amps, they're set the way I set them, I can now focus on what's in front of me instead of what's behind me. But there's another side of that, which is where we can get gear fixated if we're not careful. Or I should say, one of the challenges is that I'm spending a lot of time in the video streaming world, and the big fixation there is they've got to have this multi-thousand-dollar camera. They've got to have this super expensive set of lights, and it's the equivalent of like, is a carbon copy no longer good enough? And by the way, the reason I mention that is if anybody out there has not seen the Edge video of him basically with Justin Norvell as they're trying out the Edge Signature Deluxe, it's him, the guitar, a carbon copy, and the amp, and you're like, well, the guy doesn't need a rack. So that is to say, we can fixate on the gear, but at a certain point, it's a matter of like it's the hands, it's the performance. How much as a player have you had to evolve around it's digital, it's analog, and my hands are ultimately what's driving this. Where do you live in that conversation? I'm sorry, that was not a clear question. So let me rephrase that. As the
I
player,
understand. I
yeah,
understand, Doug.
great.
Yeah, I get it, mate. I think you're really clear, to be honest with you. And I think you've actually answered it really, because it's all about. It always starts here. It starts here. It starts in your head. Um, for me, I've worked on my style of playing, if you like. I have a certain style. It's like the way I talk. I have a. My voice sounds a certain way, like your voice sounds a certain way, and that's the same with my guitar playing. So I like to think that regardless of what's thrown in front of me, I will still sound like me. I have a sound in my head that I'm always trying to get to, regardless of what is thrown at me in terms of gear. And I developed that sound, I guess, from a younger age. So I know uh, because that sound helps me speak or communicate appropriately in terms of how I play. So that's the sound that I'm always trying to get back to, regardless if it's a carbon copy or if it's a timeline or if it's a whatever thrown at me, whatever amps, whatever Kempers, whatever digital modeling, whatever solid state amps. I don't mind because I will make whatever work. Um, I guess the part of the advantage, I guess, or the privilege I've had of touring and touring from Australia, because we can't take our backline, we can't do all that. We take a few pedals, and we're limited to what the plane baggage allowance affords us. So we're at the mercy of whatever rental, whatever backline they have. I've flown to South Korea and had two matchless DC-30 heads and cabs, and it was the biggest wall of sound I've had. And I've literally flown over the Yellow Sea to get a PV Bandit and a Fender FM, which all the knobs were missing and they were crackling. And it was like a sound that was chalk and cheese, but I still found myself dialing in the PV Bandit with the mids and winding out the bass and tweaking my pedals to get back to the sound in my head, because it starts there. It doesn't start with, oh man, I'm limited to the gear I have, because it shouldn't change this. This is where it starts from. Um, so yeah, in a nutshell, I've experimented with the rack of doom. I've done all that. The multi effects pedals, the 20 pedals on the pedal board, the guitar straight into the amp. I've done all that, but what doesn't change is the sound in my head that I'll always try to get back to, and my style of playing. So yeah, so with the Kemper, that serves a great purpose when I travel to maybe more remote parts of the world where I can't get consistent backline. The Kemper will give me a great level of consistency. Where I use real amps, when there's real amps, if you like, I'll use the real amps. Where there's, I've gone to places where my gear hasn't arrived, and I've had to recreate my sound with an Ibanez Gem into a Digitech RP10. In the back of Romania somewhere, and I still find myself getting into scrolling through the pages of the effects and taking out the distortion, bringing up the overdrive, and winding back the gain, and putting this much delay in, because that's the sound that's in my head. So it doesn't really matter what I have in front of me. Obviously, it's nice to have nice gear, and that's going to help you speak more clearly. But give me whatever. I'll make it work. It'll be all right. Challenge accepted.
I love it. Let's see. David Thaw had a question in here. There we go. Are you still running the Mastermind rig, or is that in one of the setups that you go to?
No, I'm not. I do miss it. And I only sold it because we couldn't travel with it. It was a 10 space rack and a pedal board, and then a guitar, and then a piece of luggage, and that's 4 pieces of gear on the plane. And with our flying status, we're allowed 3, so I had to downsize to a pedal board. And we were moving house at the time, and there was gear everywhere, and I downsized. I do miss it. I love what it can do. And if I had my way, I would have the Mastermind rig, and I would have the pedal board. I have the Mastermind rig local here in Sydney, and I'd have the pedal board to travel and to do that if I had my way, if I had unlimited money. But yeah, so in a nutshell, no.
I'm going to follow that thread through. All right, so let's just say Nigel has his own plan. He can bring an unlimited number of guitars, as as
Wow.
many amps, and your own semi. So if you were going to put together the rig, so I'll tell you, I'll make my fantasy Nigel rig, and then you tell me if I got it all close. It's got to have
Okay,
the
go.
Spitfire and the AC-15. That has to be on one pair of one of the loops. That is to say, you hit on the PBC 10. That's one of the combinations. You got to have the pair of Kempers, so you got any amp that you could have in the world. You got to have all the
Hmm.
Strymon stuff. I throw in some Eventide stuff in there as well. I've never seen you with a 412 cabinet, but that doesn't mean I don't think you wish you could use a 412 cabinet. So I'm going to say maybe there's a pair of 412 cabinets, and maybe because you mentioned the matchless heads. Like there's nothing quite like playing through a 412 cabinet. Actually, it was one of my favorite things of watching Mikey on the last tour. He was playing through the oranges, and they'd split an orange 412 cabinet in front of house. I was like, it was like it's the sound of a 412 cabinet. So maybe a pair of 412 cabinets,
Hmm.
and then oh right, a the
I like where you're going with all this,
the
by the way. This is
EMS.
great.
Got to have the EMS reverb, vintage edge, and then that'll do. So I want to hear your fantasy version because I like that rig would be nuts.
It would be nuts, and I have to firstly ask where I'll be playing. If I was playing in a stadium, yeah, sure. If I was playing like in a 50, seat auditorium, I'd be like, that is nuts, you know, in a negative way. But look, all of that, and I would have switches to switch between all of that. So I'd go between my little 15 watts to the 412s. I love the sound of a big closed back, rock and roll, with a Les Paul through it. The
Come
Kempers to
on,
get whatever sound I wanted.
come
You know,
on.
um, I'd have I'd have all the pedals that you mentioned. I do. The thing that I miss the most is what currently is actually I sold my Eventide Space reverb pedal, and I wish I didn't. Um, I did what I needed to do at the time, and it was probably to buy another piece of furniture or something. But I want that back, so I might get that back. Um, yeah, I would have the full array of the Jackson audio pedals because I actually do love those pedals. Um, they sound great. I would have the Mastermind switcher with all the even the Line 6 racks and stuff. I actually love the sound of the Line 6 stuff. Um, yeah, I would have my Mesa Boogie Tri-Axis and my Mesa Boogie Simulclass 290, running into a couple of big cabs, the old Steve Lukather vibe, back in the day with the TC Electronic multi effects and all that sort of stuff. I'd have it all, whatever you throw at me. But I say all that, but these are all rigs that I've actually owned at various stages of my playing career. They've all served a purpose, So I will allude to the fact that there's no point buying all this gear if you don't know how to use it. So they've all served a purpose at various stages of my playing career, if you like. Um, yeah. So there you go. I'll leave you with that as well.
Okay, question about space. So I take it's that you have direct access to the knobs as opposed to the H9. It's the same algorithms. You got more variations on the ins and outs, and you can just adjust whatever from the face of the unit. Yes.
Hmm. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah. No, I've got. I actually have. I've got all of them. I kept them all. It's it's
Good man.
it's it's it's. Don't the chairwoman of the board might not agree, but yeah, those original Eventide pedals, they're great. They're heavy. They'll sit on the top of an amp on a backline and not
Hmm.
fall off. The unfortunate thing
Hmm.
about an H9, if you put it on the back of an amp with the weight of the cables, about halfway through a set,
It'll
it's yeah,
it'll pull it off.
it's gone.
How you said it, the chairwoman of the board. That's good. You know, I have a chairwoman, and I have three very loud board members as well, that are very expensive and demand a lot of time and energy and finance. Um, so with that, they've come, certain sales of guitars and pedals to buy, whether it's a couch or whether it's a certain school fee or whatever. You do what you got to do. It's all right.
I love it. Oh, somebody brought up the Nova delay. Oh, that's Gem again. So I do have a question. I did notice that when you were back there over in Pedal Row, there was a certain vintage Klon, if my eyes were correct. Original issue silver Klon, I think, was hiding back there. So Jem is asking, what are your favorite pedals? And obviously, the Jackson stuff is great. The Bloom is a lovely pedal. That's actually, I've got kind of an RJM PBC 6X driven board, and the Bloom is on there. Um,
Nice.
so Jem's asking, what are your favorite pedals you've had, and how would you improve them? For example, the Nova delay.
The Nova delay is, to be honest with you, is probably my favorite delay. It just has a certain sound to it. It's got a certain ease of use to it. I can easily dial whatever I want with it. It has 10 presets. I don't generally need more than 10 presets. I generally don't need more than 4 presets, to be honest with you. But I love that you can go from like a digital sound to an analog sound. You can create the space with the modulation, and it just works. And the saddest thing is on a pedal board that got stolen. So I don't have that anymore. So I'm going to I'll acquire one. I'll get one. But I do love the Nova delay. I love the from Nunabar, if that's how you say it, the stereo wet pedal. That was also on my board that got stolen. Mm. Um, I find myself every now and then going back to the old Boss DM2 analog delay pedal. Uh, yeah. What do I have on my board at the moment? Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just do this. I don't know if you can see that.
Ooh.
This, whoops, that was a guitar. Um, this is my pedal board at the moment. You guys probably have seen that. It's cables. It's the same old reiteration that I've had for a while that I'm actually probably going to pull apart, because I'm just bored of it. Yeah, it's a little bit too heavy. It is probably about 75 pounds at the moment, so the airlines don't love it. But the good thing is I'm not traveling at the moment, so it's fine. It just sits in here. There you
That's
go.
that's kind of a lovely board. So
It works. Yeah.
let's talk about drive pedals.
Hmm.
Lots of people like a transparent drive. Other people like the blanket of the tube screamer. Other people like a little bit of poke in the upper mids. Do you use different drive pedals for different things, or is there kind of like the go-to way that you find yourself setting all the drive pedals to kind of do the same thing?
Both. I again because when I play, I'm so governed by the output of what I need to do in terms of what does the song need. If I'm playing for a room of 3,500 people, working with a big band, it needs to fit into a certain space. So I'm initially governed by that factor. So I'll find myself dialing off the actual drive level, winding up the mids or the tone or the top end, just so I can actually poke through. I In saying that, I do love the old tube screamer sound. I've been experimenting more with distortion lately, and yeah, believe it or not, distortion and fuzz. I really love the odd stuff. They just make you play differently. Um, some people, I will say this, and this is definitely not a hard and fast rule, but some people love the whole true bypass. They want it to be this. They want it to be. Just get my phone going for that. They want it to be. It needs to be true bypass. It needs to have this certain cable and this certain power supply and blah blah blah. I actually I tried all that and I went through that, and all that's great. But in the end of the day, I actually don't mind. If it sounds good, then I'll use it. So I have all sorts of different drive pedals. Um, I've been using the my three main drives on my board at the moment. And when I'm in the studio, I'll chop and change and just pull whatever I need to at the time. But my main drives, I've got the Jackson Audio Broken Arrow, the Bell Star, and the Scarlet Love pedal by Sealer FX. Which is a like a local Tasmanian company, and those pedals I can dial in my sound that I love, and they all work and interact really well with each other. So that's what I have on my board. But you ask me next week, and it might be different.
Are you a drive stacker, or do you switch between the different drives predominantly?
um, Again, depends. Predominantly, probably a drive stacker. Okay. I never try to. Pedals have their capabilities and their limitations. And I'll be kidding myself if I'm trying to get all the sounds out of one pedal. So that's why I'll have like three or four. I'll set them differently. Generally, I'll have my first gain stage, if you like, a drive that's set really quite low. And again, it depends on what's pushing it, like the compressor or the preamp pedals. Um, then I'll stack from there. So I'll have a medium gain pedal after that. But the drive never gets beyond 10 o'clock, if you like. So from off to 10, because when you're stacking it, the gain goes like that. And then kind of a bitey sort of distortion type fuzz at the end. I know people say your fuzz has got to be at the start. It doesn't matter. Just put it wherever that sounds good. um, and then I'll layer from that, and depending on the type of song that I'm playing, I might just go individually. Yeah.
I love
So
it. All right. I'm not ignoring the people on Facebook, just so everybody knows. YouTube automatically shoots through into the feed for the streaming application I'm using, and Facebook doesn't. But I am taking a look over here, and I'm
gosh,
seeing
how many
my
people are watching? This is like freaking me out.
uh, 55 on Facebook, and how many over here on the tube of you?
Oh,
Hang
you
on.
guys just tell me it's all right, man.
41. First of all, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. This is, as you might imagine, I'm having about as much fun as I can have. Uh, you know, this guy, he's a
Oh,
legend. I
stop
mean,
that!
it's one of
Stop! Stop! Stop!
uh, what's that?
Stop!
Uh, well,
uh,
legend does it. All right, my buddy Derek Eastveld is actually the guy from Rev Amps, and if you haven't checked out the D20, it's actually one of the most, and in combination with this guitar in particular, the gain control you pull it out is basically instant jangle. So, uh,
hmm.
Derek has a question about kind of the back line. Let me read it. Do you find if you have a poor back line or your rig is having issues, does it distract you during worship? It's a
Oh,
great question.
100%. 100%. Oh my gosh. When you just haven't nailed your sound, you feel like it's like when you're talking, your words are like falling on like deaf ears, or they're just falling to the ground. Yes, it is distracting. I guess there comes a point where you need to just figure out how to switch off and just play your part and just do what you need to do, and just trust that the front of house guy's got your best interest at heart, and he's going to do his best, you know, his or her best to actually make you sound great. But definitely, it's distracting. I've touched on it before, but I like a certain sponginess and a certain feel to the way I play. It changes the way I attack my strings, and it changes the way I fret. The notes, and it changes the whole sustain of my sound. And well, and if that's not working, if the backline is not great, or the sound is too bright or it's too thin, I'm always second guessing myself. I'm always like fidgeting. I'm always like fiddling with the pedals and trying to settle myself.
Mm.
And I think that's where everyone, all guitarists play to their sound. They have that sound that they just feel comfortable with. And yes, but like I said, to follow up, I think there comes to a point where you just need to get over yourself and learn how to still deliver. Yeah.
All right. the worst on stage experience. There's got to be some that come to the top of, pedal board. There's a cable cutting in and out. The MIDI's resetting itself because the power is cutting in and out. Is there one that just kind of goes to the top of the list? Is like, this was the nightmare night or afternoon?
Um, I've had a few. Uh, a cameraman stepping on your pedal board, shutting it off, and doing all that. Stepping on your volume pedal or ripping a cable out, and you just spend a song, just you just you're not playing. You have parts, everything like that, but you're just not playing. Nothing's working. You're just kind of standing there. You can mime all you want, but then it's not working. I've had that. I've had the craziest experience I've had is actually when I was music directing for Darlene. I was in Nashville. I've told this story a few times. I was in Nashville, of all places, music capital of the world. We were leading worship at a Joyce Meyer conference. So, it's not like a little 100 thing. It was a big stadium. We were playing that old Delirious song, I Could Sing of Your Love Forever. Look, it's 4 chords. We're in the key of D, E minor, G, A. How wrong could you go with that? Well, Dale's called a key change. And there's a reason why we don't do key changes at church, because we just we're not good at it. She called a key change. And the problem is I didn't see it, but I was running the band. The hand kind of was like this. It was like towards the end of the chorus, the cycle, the hand kind of did that, and then it just sort of went down. So it wasn't like a turn around, we're going up to E. It was that, and I was like, is that a key change? I don't know. So I was like, that's not a key change. I'm going to stay in D. But the bass player went to E. The keyboard player sort of went to E with his right hand, but stayed in D with his left hand. The acoustic player stopped playing. The drummer didn't know what to do, so he just started building. He just built through the whole chorus. and I saw Dale's hand start shaking. She was like, I was like, I'm dead. I'm fired. So we had words after that. Well, she had words to me. And I'm still here to live to tell the story. But I've got a few stories like that. So they're quite heartbreaking when I tell them. They bring a certain angst and stress. I remember it so clearly. Anyway,
Nothing like a good disaster to. And the funny thing is you kind of lie in your hotel bed, reliving the whole experience for the next 4 or 5 hours and every time you wake up in the night, you're like, oh, it happened.
That's right. And every time when people like yourself ask me about stories like that, I remember, I'm like, oh, I remember how stressful that was.
So on the brighter
Good.
side, one of my favorite things is I watch back through these old videos. It's actually just seeing, how much you and Darlene did to move worship forward. Was there a certain moment that you kind of went, this is getting... I mean, there was a moment where it was ginormous, but there was also a moment where it's like, I remember being at my parents' house and, shout out to the Lord, it's on Time Life videos. So it's big when it gets put on a video compilation that they're showing on American TV at Christmas. They're like, that's mega big. But was there a moment that you kind of went, wow, God's really in this thing? We're this, I've been to that campus. It started off as a sheep paddock or something, before it got turned into a church. Sorry, for the Americans, that basically is a sheep farm. Was there a moment that you went, God is in this and it's about to be bigger than I could have ever imagined? Did that moment happen?
To be honest with you, I actually don't think so, because I'm well aware of the platform that I stand on. And we're Hillsong Church. We do a lot of events and conferences and a lot of tours, and I've got to, like I said, see a lot of the world and play on a lot of big platforms. And every year I think, oh man, how it can't get any bigger than that. That's crazy. How, but I feel like God's hand his anointing is still on the place. And every year we get to do, bigger is probably not the right word. It's probably levels of influences. is greater, and we start to infiltrate parts of the world that we never thought we would, and get to being afforded these opportunities to do different things. And never would I have thought. I remember when I first came to Sydney. Actually came in '99 for a conference, and standing at the back of the hub auditorium, which is our smaller auditorium, and just watching the guys lead worship, and like Darlene and Ruben were leading worship, and the Lord speaking to me very clearly back then. You can have that if you want. I was like, I think I do. I'm not really too sure what I want, but I'll give it a go. And I, fast forward a year or two, finding myself moving over here to tour with an artist who was signed to the Sony record label, and finding myself here at Hillsong Church, and then playing for the very first time. And God reminding me, look, this is what you wanted. And I remember that song that we played. I remember the first chord I played on this platform, and the excitement and the wonder, if you like, hasn't changed after all these years. I'm still, I still love what I get to do, and I'm amazed that God's hand of anointing is still on this place, and I think that's just because there's a bunch of like-minded people that are just wanting to serve in humility, and leave the agendas at the door, if you like, and it's. So I don't know if there's ever been one point that's just been like, oh wow, this is big. And I think every year since I've come, I think, man, this is huge, and it still is. It's amazing. So, yeah.
Serving in humility. Boy, that's a great topic. Success, if you're not careful, can go to your head a little bit. How do you keep that thing from building a bird's nest, as my wife would say, right? Well, I think it's in the Bible too, but the point being is that it's easy if you're not really conscious of success.
Yeah.
We start to mistake ourselves for the cause of success as opposed to what God's doing. How do you make sure that you stay aware enough such that that doesn't creep in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, we touched on at the very start of this conversation about pastoral care. With pastoral care, comes a whole lot of accountability, and everyone here that's serving on our team, whether it's the worship team, whether it's whatever team, our worship team is made up of a lot of people that serve on the platform, off the platform, do all that. We're all accountable to each other. We're accountable to our leaders. We're accountable to our senior pastors, and we serve the vision of the church. It's not our own vision. It's the vision of the church. And I think if you stay around long enough, you're going to get someone's going to offend you. You're going to get annoyed at something. You're going to get, you're going to realize that we're all human. We're all, it's not our agendas. It's people. People are gonna rub you up the wrong way and do all that because it's just people. But we serve a really big God, and I think it's really important to, I get asked this question, and maybe this can help frame it a little bit better. How have you survived this long, doing what you do? And I think it's important to things like stay teachable, stay adaptable. I've been playing for 30 something years. But someone who comes along and has been playing 6 months will have a different spin on the instrument, and or a different take on worship, or a different take on music. And then, if you stay teachable, you will learn something from that person, and that helps me grow and adapt. And staying adaptable, staying flexible, especially in this time. We're not touring at the moment, so all my skills, if you like, are going into making our online church happen. So stay adaptable. Yes, stay humble, and I guess live. Figure out what you're called to do as a person, as a musician. What you're about. What does if you're serving at church. This is a worship guitar show, if you like. If you're serving at church, figure out what you're called to do as a person, not what your leaders tell you that you are. Well, that is important as well, but I think sometimes we can end up living vicariously through our leaders and through the people above us who tell us you're this, you're that, you're awesome, you're a great player. But what happens if you get pulled from a Sunday service and, can you not play anymore? Can you help me stack chairs, and let this young person come through? What happens, But this person has told me I'm this and that, just keep going back to the Word of God, keep going back to who God tells you are first. Things like that, they've helped me keep perspective for the big picture. So again, I'm rambling, but hopefully you get something out of that.
No, there's the funny thing is there was a season where, I was kind of early on in my walk. I was still figuring some stuff out and made some mistakes. And I remember vacuuming as the worship team was rehearsing, vacuuming the auditorium. So I'm like, oh, I don't think about that season very often, but that will take you back to a place of humility. I was lead vacuum player. But
oh man, like I get it. We all want to serve with what's in our hand. That's the beauty about serving in team. But that's what it is. It's service, and service in church looks like a lot of different things, and that's okay. It's the same God we serve, so it's all needed. It's all necessary.
That's awesome. We're in our about last 10 minutes or so. Just want to give everybody a little bit of a heads up and let Nigel know that it does actually end, because I didn't actually send him an ending
Okay.
time. So it's like, the interesting thing is one of the things you do is a music director. So it's one of the most exciting roles on the platform. As you were talking about Darlene calling, the different, the key changes or any of these things. Can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that role and kind of, when you transitioned into doing that in addition to playing guitar? I take it there's a talkback mic. How do you manage stepping on your pedals and music directing simultaneously? That must be an interesting feat.
Yes. Music directing. Look, music directing came about for the need for better communication, really. Um, like that. There's only so much you can do by yelling across the stage. It's it's only gonna go so far. So yes, I'm a music director. It's part of my role here at Hillsong Church, music director for Hillsong Worship for the weekends. So what that looks like is essentially I run the bands, and I love that. I love that, and that I guess calls upon my expertise of musicianship in so many ways, and I love that I get to help shape the music and help bring direction and clarity, if you like, to the platform. And what it does essentially is frees up our singers and our worship leaders to do what they're meant to do, to lead. So they're not having to turn around and call chords or figure out the dynamics of a song or communicate to the people off stage certain things. They don't need to do that. They can just focus on what they need to do, and I'll do the rest. Yeah. So it's good. Yeah.
I love it. I would love to have you in my cans going more guitar. Um,
Oh, it's never that, man.
that's so
It's never that.
funny.
It's more drums always, mate. More drums. More drums.
So what's the name of the drummer in United? Is it Simon? What's his name?
Simon. Yeah, Cobes. Yeah,
The
Cobra.
loudest drummer I have ever heard. The volume off the stage. I have never heard a drummer play that loud. It
Really?
yeah.
Oh no. He's all right. He's gotten good. No, he's a great player, and so
Oh,
I'm
he's
just plugging
great.
my phone in because it's about to go flat. So
Oh no, that could
I'm
be
just
awkward. All
so
right.
I've got I've got these random boxes here that I've sort of propped the phone up on. So it's all class here. It's all class.
I love it. So the chairwoman of the board has a question, and I want to honor the chairwoman of the board because that's where more guitars come from. Nothing ends up in these hands these days unless they get approved by the chairwoman of the board. So I'm going to pay pay homage here. So, Melissa Doppler, do you write songs for your own creative pursuit or focus largely on the Hillsong environment? What a great question.
That's a great question. And to be honest with you, I mostly focus um, on what I need to do here. I find that gives me enough creative space and freedom. So it feeds my creativity, if you like. In saying that, I do love to just get in the studio by myself and just create, whether it's songs, whether it's parts, sounds, soundscapes, writing music. I'm not that great with the lyrics. I used to write songs. I used to write a whole lot of songs, but I if I could be so candid with you guys, I was just like, there are so many great songwriters around me. Why am I trying to, outdo them, if you like? I, you know, so what I love doing best is actually coming alongside the songwriters and helping either finish their songs musically or whatever it needs, and I find great joy in doing that. So I never want to say that's all I do, because I'm up for whatever. I love doing whatever's needed. But that's a great question. Yeah, and that's probably challenging me right now to think, what more could I actually do? Yeah.
Well, this conversation, good. That's awesome. Um, it would be
Hi, Melissa, by the
incomplete
way.
if it would be
That's like,
incomplete if we didn't talk about Chislet. So, who is kind of the great thing about you know Hillsong is that you have a chance to have this amazing worship experience, but you get a chance to have a couple of your favorite guitar players in the world in the mix. So, he's like you is one of my favorite guitar players in the world. He feeds a particular um, need in me as a consumer of worship guitar. What's it like, because I was watching the very early United videos, and he's got a stack of amps, and it must have been like 150 dB, and it's feeding back, and it's all this frenzy. What's it like kind of watching him mature, and kind of how has your relationship, if you will, how have you guys served each other musically as two guitar players and two musicians and producers of music?
It's a great question, mate. It- I have so much respect and admiration for Chiz. He is he was here before I came, and he is a very faithful guy who's a brilliant musician and great guitarist and producer, and he's got a great ear for sounds, and he just knows how to put stuff together really well. We've it's when you're serving in a place where there's so many guitarists, you can almost feel like, oh, where do I fit, or how do I carve out my own space? And I think Chislet's always Chislet's been great at just staying in his lane, and he knows what he's good at, and he does that, and he's never tried to, you know, be me or be someone else or whatever. He does him so well, if that makes sense, and he, and through that, I have so much respect for him. He has certainly matured and continues to mature as a musician and as a producer. And he was one of the first guys I met when I came, and I was hanging with him like three days ago, just in the studio, and we're still as tight as ever, tighter than ever. We've had we've, our sons were born like a week apart. Um, we've gone through seasons of various challenges, together, and done a lot of life together. He's still one of my tightest mates. Um, when I first came to church, it was like myself, himself, and another guitarist that we were the kind of the three amigos that sort of hung out and did everything together. And life sort of, you grow up, you get busy, you have a family, and there are other demands and pressures and outputs, if you like. But we're still tight. We're still tighter than ever, actually. And we respect each other as musicians, and as players, and we have our own space to operate in, and it's great, if that makes sense at all. But I have the utmost respect, for him. He's a legend. He's a great brother.
That's pretty awesome. The Gretsch thing, the funny thing is that I've got the Jangle box back there. It's an interesting thing. I'm a rock guy. I grew up playing these things, right? Like, I never imagined I would be gleefully holding a Telecaster, nor that there would be some giant Gretsch box back there. How has the size of that instrument and the air that it breathes into that, how has that kind of impacted your playing?
Well, I mean, like I said before, I mean, different guitars make me think differently and play differently. And I first picked up the Gretsch. It has certain chime to it that maybe my PRS didn't have at the time. So immediately, certain chords would take on a different characteristic. Certain voicings would take on a different characteristic. It would just there's just something about that just makes you think differently. Um, and I think the fact that you're holding a telly in your hands now, with the Gretsch behind you, shows the maturity
Mm.
you have as a player. They're able to grow and to adapt and to I guess train your ear to hear different things, and to appreciate different things. There's some people that, like, all I do is this, all I do is that, and that's fantastic. It makes them so specialized at what they do. And I guess for me, playing in funk bands, in jazz bands, in covers bands, in churches and all that, there's a variety of music that I need to output. So I think it's only wise of me to be able to increase my vocabulary, if you like. The greater vocabulary you have, the greater you can communicate into situations, in different situations you find in. So for me, yes, the Gretsch thing, has changed the way I play, but so has Duesenberg, so has Sir guitars, so has my acoustics. Everything speaks into who I am right now, and I think that's potentially the sign of a person that is wanting to mature, and grow as a player, as a musician. So yeah, so good on you as well for not just sticking with the shred machines. But you're an awesome shredder, mate. You're a great player.
Thank you, mate. That warms the heart. All right. As we get ready to say see you next week, I'm going to roll a little promo here. We have
Oh
some
no,
guys
what have you
next
got there? Oh
week.
yes, these
So
guys, I love them.
so next Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, we got Saint Pope and Stu G, which means I'm going to basically be pinching myself for, like, I don't know, 8 days after tonight. Um, just in case you don't know, first of all, let me say thank you for joining us tonight. The Worship Guitar Show is kind of a guitar outreach of sorts for Worship Musician Magazine. We can be found at worshipmusician.com. We love to basically help worship teams get better by Sunday. That's our mission. We're increasingly reviewing insane amounts of worship guitar gear, so just kind of stay tuned. But the other thing that we love is just the heart of prayer. So, Nigel, I'm wondering, I didn't warn you in advance, but I'm hoping maybe you could take us out with a little prayer before we say goodnight. Would you be so kind?
I'd love to. I'd love to. I'd love to. Okay, well, if you're tuning in or whatever like that, if you're comfortable, just close your eyes, and I'm gonna pray over you guys. Okay, so God, we thank you for this time. We thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation, and just a real honest, heart-to-heart conversation about, I guess, ultimately your goodness, and about who you are, and I thank you that we all get to play our part in bringing the gospel through music to life. So I pray for every guitarist out there, everyone who's tuning in, that your hand of blessing will be upon them, that you will continue to inspire all of us with creativity. Your mercies are new every morning, Lord God, and your creativity is endless. So I pray for an extra anointing of creativity. I pray that that peace and wholeness and wellness will be our portion, across all our families that are represented here. I thank you for Doug and this outreach and what he's doing here, and I pray for even a greater platform of influence through this, Lord God. And with everything, we say that we love you. Have your way. It's such a joy to serve you, and we thank you that the best is yet to come. In Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen. Wow. Yeah. So you Hillsong folk are prayer warriors. That's
Oh, no,
I love
thank
that.
you. Thanks for having us, man.
What a pleasure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an amazing week. Hope to see you next time. And regardless, God bless you and thanks so much, Nigel. Thank you again for making time tonight. Really, what a pleasure.
Oh man, no, it's my absolute honor. Thank you for having me and for trusting me here. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Doug.
With pleasure. Good night, everybody.